one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls two-thirds of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Men Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Men Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1, FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Happy to be with you. Let's go ahead and get started with the news that seems to be sweeping all over the country for those who are politically inclined, and that would be the firing of Andrew McCabe, formerly the Deputy Director of the FBI. Now, let's make sure we put some things in perspective, because the big deal that's being made, of course, is that he was fired, and that Attorney General Jeff Sessions fired him, and then there's this issue about the timing. We'll come back to that. However, the Washington Post, which is no friend of the Trump administration, reported back on the 14th of March. What is this? The FBI Disciplinary Office recommends firing former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. So this was as a result of an IG report from an Inspector General who was appointed by Barack Obama, but I digress. The FBI office that handles employee discipline has recommended firing the Bureau's former Deputy Director over allegations that he authorized the disclosure of sensitive information to a reporter and misled investigators when asked about it, leaving Attorney General Jeff Sessions to decide whether he should fire the veteran official just 4 days before his expected retirement date. This is not the result of anything that officials per se within the Trump administration had done. The office that does the Inspector General wrote a report that said, based on what we have found regarding Andrew McCabe, he should be fired. The recommendation from the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility is likely to add fuel to the political fire surrounding former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who abruptly stepped down from his post earlier this year, but technically remained an FBI employee. Let's unpack that a little bit. Back in January, people were lining up to go after McCabe because by then James Comey was out and we had a new director. CBS reported the following. There's a report back on January 23rd. Wray, the new director of the FBI, threatened to resign over Trump pressure to get rid of deputy at FBI, and that deputy was Andrew McCabe. FBI Director Christopher Wray reportedly threatened to resign from his post after being pressured by the Trump administration to fire Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Axios, citing 3 sources with direct knowledge of the situation, reported that Wray threatened to leave his position if he were forced to remove McCabe under growing pressure by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Sessions was urged by President Trump to put pressure on Wray. That was on the 23rd. Here's the interesting thing. 6 days later, on the 29th, The Hill writes this: FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe stepped down from his post after facing pressure from FBI Director Christopher Wray to leave the position. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. You were willing to no longer be the FBI director because of the pressure Trump put on you to fire the guy. But 6 days after that report comes out, you make him step down from his post. You didn't fire him. You didn't kick him out of the FBI. But you made him step down. You might recall that this was during the time when the memo that was coming out from the House Intel Committee, the Nunez memo, was going around, and the information in that was being made known around Capitol Hill. Not surprisingly, at least I'm not surprised at all, CBS News had the opportunity to report this just a few hours ago, I believe.
The weekend started with the dramatic Friday night firing of the number 2 man at the FBI. Andrew McCabe was expected to retire today on his 50th birthday. The controversial firing could cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost benefits. The weekend is closing with President Trump Twitter bashing top former FBI officials, including McCabe. Errol Barnett is at the White House.
President Trump continues to express growing frustration at the special counsel's investigation, writing the Mueller probe should never have been started, witch hunt. He also cast doubt on reports Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director fired on Friday, took notes of conversations between the two. I don't believe he made memos except to help his own agenda, Mr. Trump wrote today. The criticism comes alongside the president's personal lawyer, John Dowd, publicly calling for Robert Mueller's investigation to end.
Give him the time, the resources, the independence to do his job.
But Republicans like Congressman Trey Gowdy express caution.
When you are innocent, if the allegation is collusion with the Russians and there is no evidence of that, and you're innocent of that, act like it.
Senator Marco Rubio.
I remain confident that the special counsel is going to conduct a probe that is fair and thorough and is going to arrive at the truth.
Democrats fear a brewing constitutional crisis. So Senator Patrick Leahy is calling for the Judiciary Committee to investigate what he sees as politicization of the Justice Department, saying in a statement, quote, "Never before have I been more concerned for the institutions we rely on." President Trump's weekend tweets even attracted this rebuke from former CIA Director John Brennan, calling the commander-in-chief a disgraced demagogue headed for the dustbin of history. Now, CBS News has learned the special counsel already interviewed Andrew McCabe about his conversations with the president. And we've learned Robert Mueller's team has McCabe's memos, which is set to corroborate James Comey's version of events. Elaine?
Errol Barnett, thank you.
You fire the man, not because of politicization, which I find interesting. So where was Senator Leahy when Andrew McCabe was actually lying to investigators? Where was Senator Leahy when the other two FBI lovebirds were texting each other back and forth, trying to figure out a way to coronate Hillary Clinton and sink Donald Trump either as a candidate or as a president-elect? What was the issue about politicization then? Because the FBI is part of the Department of Justice. So if you're worried about the politicization of the Department of Justice now, where were you then when the corruption that led to James Comey's firing and the outing of these two individuals who had involvement in the Mueller investigation? I don't recall you tweeting or saying or requesting or calling for any investigation, Senator Leahy. Why is that? Because you only care about a certain politicization if it comes from folks with whom you disagree. I get it. As far as Trey Gowdy, Trey Gowdy just needs to go away. He's already announced his retirement. He doesn't have what it takes to run for office again. There are plenty of reports out there that he felt that he was jilted by Donald Trump by not even being asked to interview for the Attorney General job, which I guess he would have liked. And it's hard to tell sometimes by listening to him whose side he's on. Well, maybe he's not supposed to be on anybody's side. Well, he's supposed to be on the American people's side. The American people are not served by the Mueller investigation. How long do you need to look into nothing before you recognize that that's what it is? You have a problem. Now, Marco Rubio is demonstrating, both with his performance at the town hall held in Florida by the victims and their supporters of the shooting that happened back in February, where he couldn't figure out who he was. He looked like Small Hands, and he's talking like Small Hands, and he's trying to be everybody's friend because he thinks he has a snowball's chance of being president in 2020. He doesn't. And he looks weak. He looks indecisive. He looks weak. He looks like a little boy. And he should really be quiet. And maybe his political fortunes can change if he's not in the spotlight for a while. But the issue, of course, now is being changed because, let's be clear, Andrew McCabe was fired because he lied. He demonstrated a lack of candor, and his own organization, the FBI, has an office that investigates these things, and they determined he should be fired. And that's why he's gone. The big concern now that people are bringing up is the timing of the issue. But and the reason the timing is there because, well, he's being deprived of they're taking his retirement. His retirement's going away. Really? Well, that's not exactly true. Forbes magazine.com anyway reports on March 17th of 2018, no, Andrew McCabe isn't losing his pension. First of all, let's deal with the fact that if you don't work in the government, if you don't work for a union, the idea of you getting a pension is ridiculous. You don't get that. But let's talk about what is going to happen. According to this article, McCabe is all of 49 years old, likely 50 by the time readers see this, and he's 50 today on the 18th. What was lost out on, as CNN much more calmly recounts, is the ability to take his benefits at age 50 rather than somewhere between age 57 and 62. And he lost his eligibility to a special top-up in benefit formula. These are admittedly tangible financial losses, but it is grossly misleading that various news outlets are giving the general public the impression that he has lost his pension in its entirety. That is not true. He's going to get his pension. He's not going to get it now. He's going to wait 7 years. Is that a terrible penalty to pay for abusing your office and acting in a way where you should be fired? They can't even take his pension. They can take away his special eligibility for certain benefits, but he's still going to be able to take his pension in about 7 years. Move on from that. So, and of course the Democrats are playing up this thing. Why would you do this right before? You know what? He should have been fired when he lied. He should have been fired then. There's no reason to give somebody who is violating the law, because I'm waiting for the charges. This is worse than you think it is. Charges should be pending, and they probably will be. But we're going to have the IG report published, and then there's going to be another investigation, and then we'll see. We'll see if Attorney General Sessions has the wherewithal and the fortitude to go after him for committing a crime. I don't know if he does or doesn't. All it comes down to this, let me go ahead and bottom line this for you. Andrew McCabe is a liar. This is apart from the whole thing with his wife receiving campaign donations from the Clinton crime family. Andrew McCabe is a liar. They can prove that he lied. And because he lied, and they can prove that he lied, the Office of Professional Responsibility within the FBI said, you should be fired. And we recommend that you are fired. Once that recommendation is made, whoever has the authority to fire him can do so whenever they please. If you don't like the timing, my question is, do you like the crime? Do you like the action that he took, that he committed, that made what he did a fireable offense? And if he did something that was a fireable offense, when should he be fired? Should he be given more money from the taxpayers after he violated his oath of office, after he violated the public trust? He should get even more money. He should get special benefits after it's been proven that he lied. Really? You're silly. And he's not losing his pensions, though he should, in my opinion. And all this, when everybody fell away. Remember, Director Ray said at one time, I will leave my post as director if you force me to fire McCabe. 6 days later, he told McCabe to step down from the post. He didn't kick him out the FBI. He said, you got to step down. Why did he do that? He read something. And then the report comes out recommending that he be fired. And he gets fired. Ray's not trying to defend him anymore. No one's trying to defend Andrew McCabe anymore, except progressives. And they're not talking about what he did. They're talking about something as silly as the timing. Well, if the OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, hadn't recommended that they get rid of him, he might still be there. But Andrew McCabe is dirty. And his dirt was sufficient for a recommendation of dismissal. And within his discretion and his authority, the Attorney General accepted that recommendation and dismissed him. And yes, he's still going to get his retirement benefits in 7 years. What is he going to do between then and now? He's still a relatively young man. Get a job. I'm sure CNN is just waiting with a contributor's contract form. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDBQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. While we're going back and forth and everyone is up in arms regarding what's happening at the FBI with the firing of Andrew McCabe, which was recommended by the FBI itself. Oh, by the way, the Secretary of State got fired as well. Rex Tillerson is now gone. Now, for those who've been paying attention to that over all the other noise that's going on in Washington, that has been one of the more obviously not smooth relationships between this president and a cabinet member. I wouldn't consider what was going on open sniping and undermining. I don't see it that way. I know some people do. But this is how CBS reported on the firing of Rex Tillerson.
We have breaking news from Washington, where President Trump has fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. The move has been in the works since last year, but a State Department official says the president did not explain his decision to Tillerson. In fact, Tillerson only heard about his firing when it was made public.
Word is he heard it on Twitter. The president tweeted this just over an hour ago. Mike Pompeo, director of the CIA, will become our new Secretary of State. He will do a fantastic job. Thank you to Rex Tillerson for his service.
The president says he will name Gina Haspel, Pompeo's deputy, to head the CIA. She will be the first woman to ever be director. Major Garrett is at the White House, where the president spoke about his decision. Major, good morning.
Good morning. The estrangement between Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, and President Trump is long known here in Washington. They simply did not get along personally, and they disagreed on significant foreign policy matters. North Korea most recently, also Russia, Syria, and the Iran nuclear deal. And as President Trump left the White House earlier this morning, heading for Marine One and a trip to California, he talked to reporters and explained just how difficult his relationship with Tillerson had become, and that this had been an issue the two had been discussing for some time. Let's take a listen.
Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. We got along actually quite well, but we disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess he felt it was okay. I wanted to either break it or do something, and he felt a little bit differently. So we were not really thinking the same.
I asked the president during that encounter with reporters if North Korea was also an issue. He said he made the decision, which surprised many here at the White House last week, to agree to a meeting with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator, and that Rex Tillerson really wasn't a part of that conversation. That kind of estrangement between diplomacy and the president's own initiatives, part of this difficult relationship. Mike Pompeo, the person who provides the president his daily intelligence briefing and has a close working relationship with him, may in fact be more empowered as Secretary of State if in fact he's confirmed as the president expects. John?
Let's dissect that a little bit. First of all, the idea that CBS wants you to have is that there is this estrangement. No, these are two high-powered executive CEO types trying to work on different projects, and they have a disagreement. Trump said it quite plainly. We got a great relationship. We just don't agree on things. Here is the issue. If you're going to be doing foreign policy, and foreign policy is specifically the province of the President of the United States, then whoever is going to be executing that policy for the President of the United States needs to be on the same page with him. Rex Tillerson was not. He was not on the same page with him with respect to the Iran deal. Donald Trump campaigned that the Iran deal needs to be gone. And for those who have not been paying attention, Donald Trump has an annoying habit of delivering on the things for which he campaigned. And now you have a Secretary of State who does not necessarily see or have any commitment to that particular campaign promise. Well, that's obviously going to be a point of contention. Points of contention mean that people disagree. It doesn't mean they have a bad relationship. It may mean that they can't work in a superior subordinate relationship if they have fundamental differences. It's apparent that North Korea was not supposed to be handled the way that Rex Tillerson wanted it handled. Let's bear this in mind. I don't know that Rex Tillerson was a good Secretary of State or a bad Secretary of State. He was obviously a very successful executive in the private sector. But the Secretary of State is supposed to execute the president's foreign policy. Do I expect him to be in lockstep with the president? I don't expect two people to ever be in lockstep. But if you signed on to that job, it is your job to execute the president's policy. Of course, you can affect that policy. You can talk to him. You can see if you can convince him. You can demonstrate where there might be things that he's overlooking. But at the end of the day, it's his policy, and the idea is that you're supposed to carry that out. Now, Washington Post, which is no fan of this president, they brought out Ann Guerin, who actually did a reasonably good job of describing the dynamic between the president and Rex Tillerson.
My commission as Secretary of State will terminate at midnight, March the 31st.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who's one of President Trump's original cabinet picks, was fired. The two men never had a great relationship. They had policy differences. And there was a sort of a low boil of tension where Tillerson was seen as blocking the hiring and quick confirmation of people the White House wanted to fill the State Department ranks. Tillerson has been frustrated from the get-go by the number of other people who were doing parts of his job, including Jared Kushner, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, including at times the president. But that is the nature of being the Secretary of State. Foreign policy is the province of the president. Every Secretary of State has some measure of tension with every president. In this case, it went beyond that to Tillerson having frustration with not only the president, but a lot of other people who worked for him, and with the whole, some might say, chaotic way that decisions are made and assignments are given in the White House. So Tillerson's main project at the State Department was a big bureaucratic overhaul. Tillerson came in saying that he believed that the State Department budget was too big and that they had too many people, and he wanted to reduce both. It's an open question as to whether the project will continue apace without him. Beyond that, there are a couple of big policy matters that Tillerson was involved in on which the president has disagreed. The first of those is the Iran nuclear deal. The president is pretty widely assumed at this point to have one, if not both, feet out the door on U.S. participation in that deal. As flawed as the deal might be, in Tillerson's view, it was worth maintaining and preserving, and it would have been difficult for Tillerson to go around the world and sell the president's decision to walk away if, in fact, that's what happens in May. The other main issue on the table for both of them is North Korea. Over the last year, Tillerson has been out front in suggesting that the United States consider ways to try to reach out to North Korea. The president had appeared to be quite dismissive of that approach. When the president agreed this month to, quite a surprise last week, to accept the offer from the North Koreans to talk, President Trump leapfrogged over a whole quite complicated set of preliminary discussions that Tillerson would have been expected to run.
But I think Mike Pompeo will be a truly great Secretary of State.
Mike Pompeo's apparent chief credential is that he has a close relationship with the president from the start. We don't know, policy-wise, a great deal of what Mike Pompeo is likely to do. We know he is closely aligned with the president on some major policy issues, including Iran. However, the history of this job is that every Secretary of State has policy disagreements with every president. It, I think, is going to be a very interesting question to see how that plays out. The first time that Mike Pompeo really thinks the United States should do X and the president says, to heck with it, I'm doing Y, whether their relationship will suffer at all.
So let's get this straight. All of this discussion about, well, there was the account where we had people reporting that Tillerson had called the president a moron. That's not something that he says he did. He didn't acknowledge that to the media. Whether he said it or not, he may have. There was also the reports in the media that Trump was, quote unquote, emasculating Rex Tillerson, and Rex Tillerson went on with Jake Tapper, I believe it was, and said, nope, I'm fully intact. He considered those type of things petty. He had the right temperament for the position. His vision simply didn't match that of Donald Trump. And foreign policy, again, is the province of the president. If you're not on the same page with the guy who owns policy, you're probably not going to be a very good policy advocate. It seems Mike Pompeo, whose experience as a diplomat is not very well known from what I understand, but his primary qualification is this is someone that Trump believes is on the same page with him. So when they're talking about something, they have the same mindset. Does it mean they're going to come up with the same policy prescriptions? I think they're going to come up with the same policy prescriptions more often than a Trump-Tillerson combination would. They had already not necessarily gelled that well on Iran, the nuclear treaty, which I agree with the president that it needs to go. It was a bad deal from the outset. It's not going to age well, and you'll know that by if it keeps going. You're in a countdown to the mushroom cloud that'll probably form over the Great Plains states with an EMP that would basically cripple the United States. That's what the prior administration put us on path to. Donald Trump campaigned against it. I think he was right. We'll see what happens. I think that Donald Trump, with respect to Korea, has been nothing short of masterful. There are a number of people who are doing the Chicken Little dance, and they're afraid, oh, Trump's going to get us into World War III. Anyone who's been paying attention to North Korea over the past 25 plus years knows that these guys are not interested in anything other than extortion via the development or testing of nuclear weapons. You can't feed your own people. Risking a war and wiping out the only folks who can tolerate you is not only bad politics, it's poor mental health. They are trying to find a way to feed their people and extorting the United States and the rest of the world for aid of one type or another that they can say is coming in. How they use it, that's a whole other issue because their people are still starving. But this was never going to be a war. Well, they're firing missiles, and the missiles hit the ocean and don't do damage to a soul. They flew over Japan. Let me help you with something. If those missiles did not have the capacity to fly over Japan without somehow landing on Japan, they would not have been fired. This is all there is to it. I don't know why people have a problem understanding that. Yet and still, foreign policy is very important. And despite what people think about Donald Trump, his foreign policy has been very effective. There is almost no ISIS anymore compared to what we were seeing under the prior administration. NATO is actually paying more attention to its responsibilities under that treaty than that was happening under the prior administration. The UN has been given a serious check by the Trump administration, not just with the withholding of funds, but by the speech making done by the president in the General Assembly. It is Trump who called out Venezuela. It is Trump who is calling out terrorism. And those things have been affected not only by the words, but by other things that have been done by the Trump administration and the encouragement that has been given by the United States to other nations around the world. That's the Trump foreign policy. The problem is Nikki Haley was seen as someone who was more closely adhering to the Trump foreign policy objectives than Rex Tillerson, and he was the Secretary of State. Well, now that's going to change. And then we'll see if we have the same type of rapid movement on foreign policy to match some of the very quick actions we've seen on domestic policy. That would be welcome. I'd like to see it. There are a number of things and a number of issues, not just militarily, not just dealing with things like terrorism. I'm wondering how Trump is going to pursue things like abortion in his foreign policy, dealing with states that have no regard for life. And how is he going to represent the United States and use the influence of the United States to advocate for something that he has made clear is a priority for him? Now, why it's a priority? I know a lot of people who are of the opinion that Donald Trump is not a conservative. I'm also one of those people. I don't think he's a conservative. You don't have to be a conservative to not want to see children die in the womb. That's just that's barbaric. And it's something that should stop. And not only should it stop in this country, it should stop in all countries. Children do not become less valuable because you cross a border. But to summarize this up, Rex Tillerson, good guy, who just never really gelled with the president, is no longer representing U.S. foreign policy. And now we're going to have the former CIA director who, after a year of working with Trump, is someone he feels he gets along with much better, and Trump wants him to run foreign policy. Will he be confirmed by the Senate? Probably. Except Rand Paul is out there doing his normal thing, and he's going to look to not only block Mr. Pompeo, but also block his replacement to head the CIA. We'll see how well that goes. But it's another nothing burger, and it was such a nothing burger that it would have been a big deal, but it was easily overshadowed by something that was less important, which was the number 2 guy who had already stepped away from his position at the FBI getting fired. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and News Talk, WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the first hour. They're still after your guns, aren't they? Here is the interesting thing. The new tactic is the employment of non-voting children. That's not new. But now those who are old enough to express an opinion, no matter how poorly informed, and who can actually be disruptive to society, and those are high school students. So you know, since the shooting back in February in Parkland, Florida, we've had two primary activists. One whom I call Soy Boy, has a triangular face, and I think his last name is Hogue. And then there is Buzzcut Girl, and I don't really know her name, and I'm not trying to know her name. But they have gone Hollywood. They are everywhere. They are supported by everyone. My only question for those two is I just want to know whether or not they've met George Soros yet, because I already know that he is behind these type of things, and I know that his money can be found supporting these kids. Because I think the Hogue kid said he wasn't going back to school until some legislation was passed, so he is a truant according to Florida law, and I wonder how long that's going to be dealt with. I wonder how it's going to be tolerated is a better word, but I digress. So a month after the shooting, we have a quote-unquote national walkout where we need to walk out, but it's only going to be for 17 minutes. Now, this is very strategic, very clever by the left. The idea is to be disruptive with your act, but not so disruptive as to call the type of negative attention that could shut you down. At the end of the day, what's 17 minutes? And if they do 17-minute walkout at, say, lunchtime, all that's happening is the kids don't eat, but they still had their symbolic 17-minute walk. They still can say that they protested at school gun violence, even though the protest on its face really wasn't much of anything. It doesn't matter. The optics is what matters. Can I see thousands of kids walking around on the campus outside of class showing that they are so concerned about gun violence that controlling that is more important than their education? Yeah, okay. That's the message that they want you to believe. And not surprisingly, because it is disruptive, these type of stories were looking, they're waiting for these to come out. Think Progress published, schools are punishing students who walked out to protest gun violence. Well, you're not authorized to walk out of school whenever you feel like it. That's not, I'm sorry, there are laws against that in almost every state of the union. Arkansas students punished with paddle for walkout over gun violence. That's what a parent said. Do I believe that? Well, it's possible. National school walkout, CNN was there talking, students demand new gun laws. And you have the you have the interesting visual of, you have one of the teen protesters, and I'm not trying to know who these kids are. They're inconsequential, so I don't really not trying to know who they are. But he was giving his speech. It looked like he was in Washington, D.C., making his pitch. And he had Chuck Schumer standing directly behind him as he was at the podium going forth. And Chuck Schumer goes nowhere without armed bodyguards. But these are the same children who don't believe that armed bodyguards should protect them, even if those armed bodyguards come in the form of teachers. Now, the senators whom they want to move things through and make law, they don't sneeze in public without an armed bodyguard. And there's Chuck Schumer standing behind the kid who's calling for all this gun stuff, and Chuck has folks all around him with concealed weapons. The hypocrisy is off the chart. This is not what you think it is. This is not a direct attack on the Second Amendment. It is an indirect attack, because the only thing that they keep saying they're asking for is the same lie that Barack Obama told for 8 years. We just want common sense laws. We want to fix NICS. We want to do background checks. All these things that they're saying, these are reasonable. No, what they are is an attempt to transfer your decision about whether you should own a gun to somebody else. We need background checks. So what is it that's going to disqualify? And who's going to determine that? We can't afford to have mentally ill people. Well, who determines what there's a lot of mental illness out there. Who determines what mental illness means that somebody is so depraved and so mentally deficient that they no longer have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense or any other purpose? I don't hear that discussion. Donald Trump just signed a law not that long ago keeping people, the government particularly, from even reporting on folks who had certain types of illnesses, which would have included a whole lot of former military veterans, which would have kept them from being able to exercise their right to keep and to bear arms. They are going about this indirectly by taking your right to decide and putting it in the hands of some government official who we know doesn't want you to have a gun. Now, if you think that is something that you should support, there's really something wrong with you. But there's a lot of things wrong with a lot of people in this country. But that's not all, because what the left wants, what the progressives want, is monolithic thought. They want everyone to agree with them. This is how far it goes. I'm going to give you 2 clips. One from California, which you can imagine is a state where they would love to snatch everybody's guns if they could. And the other from Ohio. The one in California deals with a teacher who simply asked a question.
Brooklyn high school teacher is on paid administrative leave tonight over her views about the national school walkout.
The teacher says all she did was open up a debate about the politics of the protest in her classroom. CBS 13's Lamore Abrams is in the newsroom with an interview you'll see only on CBS 13. Lamore.
Tony Ancharin, Mrs. Benzel, teaches history at Rockland High and tells me it was only appropriate to talk to her class about the politics of organized protests ahead of the school walkout. But she says the school disagreed with her views and told her to stay home this morning.
I am aghast.
Julianne Benzel says she never discouraged her students from participating in National School Walkout, but she did question whether it's appropriate for a school to support a protest against gun violence if it's not willing to support all protests.
It's the best example I thought of at the time. If a group of students nationwide or even locally decided I want to walk out of school for 17 minutes and go in the quad area and protest abortion, would that be allowed by our administration?
She says the administration didn't talk to her about her lecture last week, but while thousands of students walked out of class Wednesday morning, Mrs. Benzel received this letter from her Human Resources Department informing her she's being placed on paid administrative leave.
I didn't get any backlash from my students. All my students totally understood that there cannot be a double standard.
Including Nick Wade, who did not walk out.
If we were to go to the school and say something like, I want to walk out for maybe abortion rights, then, they probably wouldn't let us because that's more of a conservative push.
The Rockland School District won't say whether his teacher is in trouble because of that classroom debate. A spokeswoman provided this statement, reading in part, a Rockland High School teacher has been placed on paid administrative leave due to several complaints from parents and students.
very divisive inherently.
For now, Mrs. Benzel hopes the National Student Walkout prompts a bigger conversation, not just about Second Amendment gun rights, but First Amendment free speech.
But if you're going to allow students to get up and walk out of class without penalty, then you have got to be able to allow any group of student that wants to protest.
Now, Mrs. Benzel tells me she has retained legal counsel and plans to sit down with school administrators tomorrow morning.
The interesting thing you're seeing there is contrast this with university professors or even high school teachers who are way to the left of center and would advocate a position that is very left, that would be hostile to anything that is considered either centrist or right of center. Do they get sent home? Now, granted, she got a paid administrative leave, so this is kind of like a warning shot. But if the students have the right to free speech, do the teachers not? And what is it that she advocated that was worthy? Well, of course, we have some complaints. You put somebody on leave over an allegation. Oh, that's right. We're in the Me Too era, where allegation is the same as conviction. So if someone says you did something or says you did something wrong, then what we're supposed to do is punish first, and then maybe if it is convenient to go back later and take a look and see if it was worthwhile, whether or not we did the right thing. But the first thing we have to do is to take the allegation as a conviction. You had complaints from students and teachers, students and parents, excuse me. Okay, doesn't the teacher have the right to be heard about that? Because you didn't talk to her, you just suspended her without pay. And because they didn't take her money, she's supposed to accept that and be quiet. Well, she's not doing that. She was found on the news. Now, here's another situation. There was a student who did not participate in the protests in Ohio, and he was suspended from school. I find that one just fascinating as well.
Yesterday, we heard about local students getting detention for walking out of class Tuesday. Well, now a Columbus area teen was suspended after doing the opposite, not leaving class. But we found out there's more to this story. Reporter Rick Reitzel from our sister station in Columbus explains.
Jake Shoemaker says he was given two choices, go outside for the walkout or stay in the Commons.
They've made it in such a way to where if you went outside, you were for the protest, which was gun control and gun violence. And if you didn't go and sat in the Commons, you were pro-gun violence.
Instead, saying he stayed in his classroom and says he was suspended only for that.
I wouldn't say that I was suspended for not participating, but I was suspended for having something of a small protest of my own.
Here's what the district says about that letter's allegations posted on the internet about the suspension, which they say was taken out of context.
The accusations are what make it false. This student or any student was not suspended due to walking out or not walking out. It's the allegations that the school district suspended somebody because they chose not to participate that makes this 100% false.
This suspension letter on social media has taken a life and an agenda all its own.
It felt like a no-win situation for me, to where I would be judged by my peers or stand up for something I don't believe in.
Jake says his friend posted the letter, which went viral overnight. Tens of thousands of people shared it, and many readers inundated the Hilliard schools along with the Shoemakers' phones.
My voicemail is filled with comments and calls, some pretty nasty, to be honest with you, vulgar language.
The Shoemakers say their phone calls were even more threatening.
Some of the phone calls I got, people thought I was a principal. I've even had like a couple death threats.
Here's the disturbing thing. The left has now done to schools what Colin Kaepernick tried to do with sports, which is bring politics into a place that it does not belong. Now, there is no reason for politics to be in sports whatsoever. I would not say that there is no reason for politics to appear in schools. But remember why this child was suspended. It wasn't so much because he did not participate in the walkout. He basically said, I'm not taking your label. I'm not taking your I'm either this or that label. Because if you go and participate, then you're one thing. And if I go over here, then I'm another thing. Well, I don't believe in either of those. And my First Amendment right tells me I do not have to accept the label you want to put on me. And because he didn't accept the label, he didn't take a side, which should be his prerogative. He was suspended. You should have a problem with that. You should also have a problem with what happened in Chicago, where students trashed a Walmart during the walkout protest. I thought it was supposed to be 17 minutes. I guess it went a little bit longer. They throw items at shoppers. Walmart employees hearing gunshots in the parking lot during the rampage. Okay? This is not about what you think it's about. Chicago police are trying to identify around 60 students from Simeon Career Academy who went on an extremely damaging spree while they were supposed to be protesting guns on the Wednesday the 15th, or the 14th, excuse me. More shockingly, several Walmart employees reported that they heard gunshots outside the rampage and that some of the students were throwing smoke bombs. One Walmart employee and eyewitness provided a statement to this particular publication called RedElephants.com. These guys jacked up our store pretty good. They pounced on cars in the lot. They vandalized 2 of the school buses parked there. They threw Gatorade bottles at shoppers, smoke bombs, and we heard gunshots in the parking lot. Now, for those who say, well, Red Elephants is a bad site, well, they also posted security footage of the student rampage. The point is this. If you think that the left is principled, you're wrong. They are resolved to get their way using any tools and any methods that they can. And right now, for the time being, as long as they think it's going to get them something, they are using teenage children. If you let it work, it's not their fault. And I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, for several decades, there has been a concerted effort to literally destroy masculinity in America. The decades-long mental and spiritual beatdown of American boys and men has now resulted in a catastrophic tidal wave of human destruction. The so-called male domination of society is at best an outright lie that is perpetrated by leftists in all segments of society. Many educators try to convince parents to drug their boys in elementary school so that they won't act like little boys. Boys are more often not encouraged to be all they can be by their families, especially in urban community settings, while those same boys often witness their sisters getting heaped with praise and encouraged to be themselves, and that everyone should accept them no matter how they act. If not, they're considered abusive to females. People may wonder why 77% of all suicides are men and boys, why over 90% of all American inmates are men. For all you feminazis who enjoy your high place above men while pretending to be victims of men, you are part of the effort to weaken our republic from within. If male recovery does not happen soon, your high place could soon tumble. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Men Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Men Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Men Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Men Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Men Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Wow. Texas and California, tale of two states. That contrast has been going on for a number of years now. Texas is now no sanctuary to illegals. Let's follow this story a little bit back to when it actually occurred, because back in May of last year, some 10 months ago, the governor of Texas actually went on Facebook and I believe had a Facebook Live session to commemorate the signing of the law in Texas, which was called Senate Bill 4, that made sanctuary cities within the state of Texas illegal.
Let's be clear about something. We all support legal immigration. It helped to build America in Texas.
Live on Facebook, Governor Abbott signs a controversial bill into law. The so-called Sanctuary Cities bill is now law. It will take effect September 1st. However, that could be delayed as Texas Democrats are already working to draft a lawsuit. SB 4 requires police chiefs and sheriffs to comply fully with federal immigration agents. And that means holding all ICE detainers in jails until the feds can pick them up. Governor Abbott released a statement breaking down the penalties public officials could face if they don't comply. That includes a civil penalty for $25,000 per day of violations, carries a Class A misdemeanor charge, and removal from office.
Elected officials and law enforcement agencies, they don't get to pick and choose which laws they will obey. There are consequences, deadly consequences, to not enforcing the law.
In his Facebook Live broadcast, Governor Abbott singled out Travis County Sheriff.
Yeah, when the bill passed last week, Sheriff Sally Hernandez said she was disappointed but would follow the law. Now, Hernandez drew the ire of the governor back in February when she announced her department would not hold people in jail for immigration officials unless they were accused of a serious crime. Well, people opposing the law, they are already getting ready for a court battle. KXAN's George Rodas joins us live from the state capitol this morning with an in-depth look at what some area lawmakers are calling on the public to do. Good morning.
Good morning, John. Protests are actually expected to kick back up today, those starting yesterday after the bill's signing. Those protesters saying that they're not going to go silently into the shadows. They're going to stand up and fight. State Representative Eddie Rodriguez saying the same thing, that he is going to fight this, and so are Democrats and Republicans should be prepared for a long battle over the Sanctuary Cities bill. In fact, as you mentioned earlier, Sally mentioned earlier, there is already a lawsuit that has been drafted by lawmakers. Rodriguez represents Austin and Travis County, and in a statement says SB 4 will be challenged in court. You can take that to the bank. When Governor Abbott signed SB 4 tonight, he also signed a blank check on a taxpayer's behalf to protect yet another blatantly discriminatory law. The bill supporters say any legal challenge will fall flat, pointing to Arizona's so-called Show Me Your Papers law. That required local police there to ask immigration status if they believed someone was in the U.S. illegally. That part of the Arizona bill was upheld in the U.S. Supreme Court in 2012.
The key policies in this bill, they've already been tested at the United States Supreme Court and approved there. And it simply makes sense. Citizens expect law enforcement officers to enforce the law, and citizens deserve lawbreakers to face legal consequences.
Travis County District Attorney Margaret Moore says she's drafting 2 letters, one for crime victims and one for witnesses to crimes who are undocumented immigrants. They're to carry these letters in case they're detained by ICE immigrants. The letters telling those ICE agents, rather, that these undocumented immigrants are important to ongoing criminal cases. Back to you.
This is the whole enchilada regarding immigration in a nutshell. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. It's Americans versus non-Americans. I wish you could go to another country and have that country pass a law that says we will not give benefits, we will not give sanctuary to those who are in this country illegally, and then try to start a lawsuit defending the right of illegal immigrants in that country not to be detained and not to be deported. Only the United States is this crazy. And it's because only the United States entertains people who are basically intent on destroying its own sovereignty. Democrats are anti-American. Just face it. Well, the law was passed. The law was signed. And predictably, Democrats filed a lawsuit. Democrats and their allies among the immigrant community. And don't forget, this wasn't about legal immigrants. It's about illegal immigrants. But they filed a lawsuit anyway. One of the things that they found was interesting. Well, I'll go ahead and play the clip. I'll talk to you about it on the other side. They did, of course, file a lawsuit, and they found a sympathetic judge because Obama appointed a bunch of judges. You can find a judge to oppose anything that the American people want these days. And in August, the bill was set to go into effect in September. In August, predictably, the opponents of the bill in Texas found a judge they could work with.
A federal judge has temporarily blocked Texas from punishing so-called sanctuary cities. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed legislation in May banning sanctuary cities in the state. Under the law, local authorities could face punishments like jail time or daily fines up to $25,500 if they don't comply with the federal immigration practices. But a U.S. district judge in San Antonio is questioning if it's constitutional. In his 94-page ruling, the judge wrote measures in the law could lead to discriminatory practices and violate constitutional amendments, among other things. Part of the legislation the judge took issue with is detainer requests. Those requests order local officials to detain those suspected of being in the country illegally, even if they haven't been accused of a crime. The judge ruled those detainer provisions would, quote, inevitably lead to Fourth Amendment violations against unreasonable search and seizure. The judge said parts of the law violate the free speech provision in the First Amendment because he said it punishes authorities for supporting policies that run counter to the federal immigration agenda. The ruling also points out the law could erode community trust with law enforcement at the state and local levels. He says evidence suggests implementing a ban could adversely affect the economies of cities and, by extension, Texas as a whole. The law was supposed to go into effect Friday. Texas officials have said they plan to fight the block.
94 pages. I guarantee you the judge's decision took up more ink than the law itself. And constitutionality, you have a free speech, a First Amendment right to free speech to allow you to violate your oath. The oath of office is to uphold the laws. And now this is the law of the land in Texas. And it is in agreement with the law of the land in the United States. And as the governor of Texas pointed out, the key provisions of the law had already been before the Supreme Court, including something similar to the show us your papers provision in Arizona, which was upheld by the Supreme Court. So guess what? The judge shopping was in effect, and it worked temporarily. That was August. because less than a month later, the Fifth Circuit had its say.
Earlier today, a federal appeals court in New Orleans ruled that parts of Texas's sanctuary cities ban can go into effect, overruling a lower court's decision to temporarily block it. That three-judge panel of the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the state can enforce two sections of that law.
And with a new decision on SB 4, Channel 5 reached out to El Cenizo Mayor Raul Reyes. Now, last month, we brought you a closer look at the city and its mayor who brought the lawsuit against the state. SB 4 Mayor Raul Reyes says today's decision is temporary, and he points to a more final ruling scheduled sometime in the near future.
There are more layers ahead to this legal battle between the state and the officials who say that new law is unconstitutional.
Channel 5's Christian Van Pricing joins us live in the studio to explain. Christian.
Basically, a higher court reversed the temporary block against SB 4 that the lower court ordered. It may seem complicated, but the whole point is that it's not over.
August 30, sections of SB 4 were blocked by a federal judge. Now most of those blocks are removed.
So now they can go into effect.
Immigration attorney Alex Martinez says the court was mulling over a temporary block. The Fifth Circuit Court reversed, in part, what the lower court decided. But we haven't even gotten into the constitutional debate about SB 4. This stepping through the court could happen all over again when the merits of the law are heard. That comes after the injunction is finalized.
Now what we expect is for an appeal on that decision to go up to the Supreme Court.
Christian Van Pricing, Channel 5, News at 6.
Now remember, the key provisions of the law have already been before the Supreme Court and upheld. And I guarantee you that the people in Texas did everything they could to match the language of those provisions to align with what has already been decided in their favor, effectively, before the Supreme Court. So this is just an exercise. We already know how this is going to turn out. So they got the ban, they got the block or the injunction by judge shopping. Then you get to a panel of the Fifth Circuit Court who kind of sides with Texas. And they said, well, there's going to be another ruling soon. Well, yes, there was. On the 14th of March, there was another ruling. And guess what happened?
A federal appeals court ruled most of Texas's ban on so-called sanctuary cities can stand. For now. The court ruled Tuesday most of the law can take effect while the case plays out. The exception is a provision that punishes local officials for endorsing policies that limit federal immigration enforcement. The law in question, called Senate Bill 4, penalizes local law enforcement officials who don't help federal agencies with immigration enforcement. The Tuesday ruling effectively reverses a prior ruling by a federal judge in Texas that temporarily blocked key parts of SB 4 from going into effect. That judge said parts of the law might be found unconstitutional.
So aside from the fines on local officials, you cannot have sanctuary cities in the state of Texas. So they started, passed the law. See, it's the interesting thing. The people's representative spoke, and then a minority group went judge shopping to find a court that would be sympathetic. And then the more judges that heard the argument against the will of the people expressed by their duly elected representatives in Texas, the effect of judge shopping was rendered inert. It was done. Well, now this is still going to go before the Supreme Court, and we already know what's going to happen there. We already know. Now, whether or not they can sustain fining people $25,500 a day, well, we'll see. But as of now, it is illegal to have a sanctuary city in the state of Texas. Texas is dealing with illegal immigration properly. No, you don't get to come here and sit and squat and act as though you have the rights of citizens when a way of getting into this country is illegal. Contrast that with the state of California, which instead of banning illegals, they've become de facto a sanctuary state. They didn't stop there. Here's what the state of California did back in 2015.
The debate over immigration has turned red hot in Huntington Park, California. The city has just filled 2 positions with people who immigrated to the United States illegally. Ben Tracy is there.
We the people implies we the citizens, not we the illegal aliens.
Tensions boiled over at Huntington Park City Council meeting Monday night because of the city's decision to appoint 2 undocumented immigrants to its advisory commissions.
Do you consider yourself an American? Yes.
21-year-old Julian Zatarain is now a member of the Parks Commission. He sneaked into the United States from Mexico when he was 13 to be with his mother.
I want to do something better for my city, and that I want to represent everyone, including the undocumented community.
But at the same time, do you take responsibility for the fact that you're currently breaking federal law of the United States?
You know, the fact that I'm here illegally, I understand that, but it's a reality that we have to deal with. I want people to understand that we come here wanting a better future. And once we're here, we love this country. The only thing that we want is to make this country proud of having us here.
Undocumented immigrants make up more than 15% of the population of Huntington Park. Mayor Karina Macias says it's time to give them a voice in city government.
But are you sending a message that you can break the law and be rewarded for that?
I don't think so. You're not going to get rid of them. You're not going to deport them. So what do? You know, you have to engage those individuals in a positive way.
Those positions could have been given to an American.
Those opposed say illegal immigrants don't deserve the benefits of citizenship, including Dan Stein, president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform.
If you start giving out those benefits like they're candy, not earned, ultimately you destroy the value of citizenship and the basis of our American democracy.
Now, the mayor here says she opened these positions to undocumented immigrants in part because too few legal residents were applying. Federal law does prohibit them from being paid, so, Charlie, these 2 new commissioners will be unpaid volunteers.
So this is the way it works. It's not all at once. It's creeping illegality. It's creeping attack on the sovereignty. You're going to take people who have no right to be in the country and make them part of government? Well, they're not being paid. Really? That's how it starts. And here's where we are 3 years later. Now, instead of appointing people, notice how they're not being voted in, because you know you can't get that done quite yet. But you appoint them to posts as part of city government. Well, they're unpaid, so it doesn't matter. Well, if it doesn't matter, then why are they there? And oh, by the way, the woman that you heard who was mayor in 2015, she's now vice mayor. She's been replaced, but she hasn't been thrown out of government herself, which I find interesting. 2015, California, a city in California, appointed illegal immigrants to government posts, unpaid. But now that taboo has been broken, that someone who's not an American citizen should not be part of American governance. They broke that taboo. And 3 years later, in 2018, they've done this.
As you know, it is illegal to hire an illegal immigrant. In fact, ICE enforces that every day, even fining one company $98 million for hiring undocumented workers. Yet, the state of California has now appointed an illegal immigrant, and attorney Lizbeth Mateo, 33, to a statewide committee. She'll be entitled to reimbursement. Senate President Kevin De Leon called Mateo courageous, determined, and dedicated to those seeking their rightful place in this country. Now, Mateo, who was brought to the U.S. from Mexico at age 14, tweeted, "I look forward to working with the rest of the committee and the Student Aid Commission to increase the accessibility of post-secondary education for low-income students." Now, California allows undocumented immigrants to practice law, get a driver's license, receive in-state tuition, receive some welfare benefits, and the state pays their legal fees if arrested. Police will not confiscate an undocumented worker's car, even if they drive without insurance. But this is a first. So while she is not a salaried employee, the state policy entitles her to reimbursement for expenses. So the state and taxpayers will be paying an illegal immigrant, though it is against federal law. This, Sandra, of course, is another way for the state of California to affirm its sanctuary status and its resistance to President Trump.
That is where we are now. You have elected members of California's government talking about we need to have people to find their rightful place in the country. If you're an illegal immigrant, you have no rightful place. That's the first thing you need to understand. You have no rightful place. But notice the progression in California. California is giving the state away as part of a military operation without a shot being fired. What's happening in California, though viewed more benignly, is really no different than what's happening in Western Europe. That's not immigration, that's an invasion. And what's happening in California is the Democrats in California, the progressives in California, the anti-Americans in California are aiding and abetting giving the state back without firing a shot. If this happened anywhere else, there'd be bloodshed. But California is not really part of America ideologically anymore, not from a governmental standpoint. The next step, because we already know illegals do vote in California as they do in other parts of the country. The next step, since we've already demonstrated that they can hold office, be appointed to government posts at the city and now the state level, and they already vote, the next thing you're going to see are elected illegal immigrants in the state of California. That's the direction you're headed. So, now that we've fired Andrew McCabe, it is time for the Department of Justice to start perp walking people in California because they are attacking the sovereignty of the United States. Texas is going in the right direction, California in the wrong direction. One of the reasons why you see so many people going to Texas from California versus the other way around if they are American citizens. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, talkamericaradio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Let's talk about tariffs for a moment, shall we? And the reason is simple.
Stay focused. Talk about things that matter to people. It's the economy, stupid.
Indeed. It is the economy. And that's the reason why tariffs went into place. The New York Times published an article on the 8th of March entitled, Trump Authorizes Tariffs, Defying Allies at Home and Abroad. What I get out of this is that our friends at the New York Times, if you read the article, of course, are no friends of the president, and they are not crazy about the tariffs. President Donald Trump defied opposition from his own party and protests from overseas as he signed orders on Thursday imposing stiff and sweeping new tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. But he sought to soften the impact on the U.S. closest allies with a more flexible plan than originally envisioned. The actions, this is a quote from Trump, the actions we are taking today are not a matter of choice, they are a matter of necessity for our security, Trump said in a ceremony at the White House where he officially authorized the tariffs, which would go into effect on the 23rd of March. Flanked by steel and aluminum workers, some wearing coveralls and holding hard hats, Mr. Trump presented the move as a way to rebuild vital industries decimated by foreign competition. Our factories were left to rot and to rust all over the place. Thriving communities turned into ghost towns. That betrayal is now over. Indeed, the White House press secretary relayed what was going to happen a week before, or the response or the rationale behind what was happening a week before during one of her press conferences.
The president's concerned about the men and women of this country who have been forgotten about, the industries that our country was founded and built on, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. This is something, frankly, the president's been talking about for decades, certainly something he talked about regularly on the campaign trail, and something that he's delivering on, making that clear today, and those details and that actual announcement and signing will take place sometime next week. These are conversations that the president has been having for a long time. He's made his intentions very clear to the team at the White House, and I don't think it came as a surprise to anybody here.
No, it didn't, if you were paying attention to the campaign. How do you think he won Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania? He went out and he talked about the unfair trade practices that were being used against the United States and had been co-signed by the federal government. Now, the interesting thing to me is everybody's upset about Donald Trump and what he had done with 25% tariffs and 10 on steel and 10% on aluminum. Now, let's be fair to previous administrations. Let's be fair to the Obama administration. The Obama administration in 2016 put a 522% tariff on Chinese steel, certain steel products. I don't remember the New York Times writing a story about that. In 2010, certain Chinese steel products were hit so severely that China stopped importing them into the United States. I don't remember anybody crying about China being unable to import certain steel products. In 2014, the Obama administration hit 9 different countries with tariffs on steel ranging up to 118% tariffs. And I still don't recall the reaction from the mainstream media, from the Republican Party. I don't remember all of this. In short, Donald Trump is doing, from a percentage or an amount of penalty standpoint, less than Barack Obama did. But Barack Obama didn't get this type of criticism on trade. Kind of makes you wonder. Kind of makes you wonder. Especially when the New York Times report goes on to say the orders were Mr. Trump's most expansive use of federal power to rewrite the rules of global trade since he took office and upended the prevailing consensus on free markets that has largely governed Washington under administrations of both parties for decades. He has taken away U.S. federal support for globalism that hurts the United States and her workers, that has gone on in Washington for decades, and that is without regard for the specific instances I mentioned that went the other way. Despite going after China, because China was just simply egregious. They are out there. They are dumping steel not on the United States. China's dumping steel on the entire world. And it just got so bad that you had to do something. But NAFTA is a bad deal. There are other bad deals for the United States throughout global trade. They're there. And Donald Trump went to the American people who know this. Let's make sure we understand. If you listen to the mainstream media, anybody who doesn't wear a suit and tie who goes to work is an idiot. So this is beyond their understanding. Donald Trump didn't believe that. He went to them and told them what he was going to do. He told them why he was going to do it, and they voted for him. Of course, his own party had problems with it, which is interesting. I'm going to play a clip now. And, you know, the reemergence of Ed Schultz on RT America is always funny to me. You know, it's, as they say, you know, it's tough out there for a pimp. And after he got blasted off of MSNBC for demonstrating who he was and has been for quite some time, at least he's working again.
The steel industry and trade deals have all of a sudden become a sore subject with Republicans. The president remains determined to move forward with tariffs to protect American jobs.
I'm here to protect, and one of the reasons I was elected is I'm protecting our workers, I'm protecting our companies, and I'm not going to let that happen.
So the president's policy is causing a big political and philosophical issue for conservatives.
The president is on target to satisfy the voters he took from the Democrats in 2016. He preached fair trade and promised to deliver on deals that benefited American workers. Calling for a 25% tariff on imported steel and 10% on imported aluminum, Republican leadership is now trying to put the brakes on Trump to avoid an all-out trade war.
There is clearly abuse occurring. Clearly there is overcapacity, dumping, and transshipping of steel and aluminum by some countries, particularly China. But I think the smarter way to go is to make it more surgical and more targeted.
The president has not completely defined his policy on implementing tariffs, but he's winning the support from some Democrats where jobs have been lost in the steel industry.
I think the focus should be more on China than it is on our friendly trading partners like Canada. But I support the idea of aggressive trade enforcement, and I think that was generally the right thing to do.
Canada is America's #1 customer, and they have openly rejected the idea of tariffs. Some feel this may be a bigger play to a better trade deal.
They're not just a large partner in steel. They're our neighbor. They're our ally. We're in a trade agreement with them. And I think this thing came as a big, huge shock. And they're typically Canadian and acted with some poise in their response and may have sort of sounded a little bit of a sigh of relief in the last 24, 48 hours.
That this might be a play to a bigger deal?
Yeah, that they think that perhaps maybe this is a lot more about China than about Canada or about the EU even. But that certainly wasn't clear from the announcement last Thursday. And quite frankly, you know, until the president actually makes his announcement later this week, we don't know for sure. But wait and find out.
Wasn't this an effort to target state-sponsored steel and aluminum from South Korea and China?
Well, I think it is more about China and South Korea, and the president sort of indicated as much in his initial reaction. But that doesn't mean that the other countries, like Canada and the EU, weren't concerned because he didn't put any sideboards. There were no parameters placed upon it, which freaks everybody out.
Notice Paul Ryan, who was in that clip, saying, well, we know there are abuses. We know that there's overcapacity. We know there's dumping. Why didn't you do anything about it, Mr. Speaker? Why didn't you urge prior presidents to go the route that Donald Trump talked about? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you oppose NAFTA? Why didn't you talk about the differences or the offsets in trade? Instead of that, you were out there publicly opposing the Trump candidacy until, of course, he won. Interestingly enough to me, are the people that actually support this. For example, there was a big election, special election in Pennsylvania for a congressional seat. I think it was in Pennsylvania Congressional District 18. And both candidates supported the tariffs. Why? Because Donald Trump won the state of Pennsylvania talking about tariffs, talking about making trade more fair for Americans. You have people like Elon Musk saying that there is reason to support tariffs. Donald Trump actually cited that back on the 8th of March in comments that he made publicly.
Very interesting. I saw a tweet just came in from Elon Musk, who's using our wonderful space facilities and did a great job 3 weeks ago. He said, for example, an American car going to China pays 25% import duty, but a Chinese car coming to the United States only pays 2.5%, a tenfold difference. So an American car going to China, think of that, pays 25% import duty. So we send our car over there, pay 25%. They send their car over here, 2.5%. 10 points, that's from Elon, but everybody knows it. They've known it for years. They never did anything about it. It's got to change. We're going to be doing a reciprocal tax program at some point so that if China's going to charge us 25% or if India's going to charge us 75% and we charge them nothing, if they're at 50 or they're at 75 or they're at 25, we're going to be at those same numbers. It's called reciprocal. It's a mirror tax. So they charge us 50, we charge them 50. Right now, they'll charge us 50, we charge them nothing. Doesn't work.
Reciprocal tariffs. Please explain to me how that is hindering free trade. Well, you're going to start a war because there is no free trade without both sides acting as though they want the other's business, as though they're willing to trade, willing to buy the other's products. When there's an order of magnitude difference, as the president just spoke about, with respect to duties on products between companies, that's not free trade. Neither is it fair trade. The idea that the United States, in order to hold to some free trade narrative, should accept unfair tariff imbalances makes no sense. It makes no sense to the American people. That is one of the reasons why Trump is president. This is part of the problem we have in dealing with our elected officials. They knew, as you heard Speaker Ryan say, well, we know there's these things going on. We know there are imbalances. We know there's overcapacity. We know there's dumping. But they wouldn't do anything. And when Trump talked about doing something, well, we're going to have a trade war. It's going to be terrible. Well, guess what? Let's see. Because one thing you do have to remember in this whole trade war discussion is the size of the United States economy versus the size of those other economies. With the exception of China, nobody else has an economy that produces more than $10 trillion in gross domestic product annually. There's nobody else. That's one of the reasons China is getting away with the dumping. They have the the gross domestic product power to get away with this stuff. Our economy is about a third larger, about 50% larger, between a third and 50% larger than China's, which gives us the capacity to absorb all the unfair trade practices that are thrown our way. If we reverse that, these other economies have problems. And the idea is to give them problems until they decide to engage in fair trade, which is going to help the United States. It's going to increase our GDP. I've listened to people talk about silly things like, well, if you do this, a can of beer is going to cost more, and Joe Six-Pack's going to have a problem with that. You think the American people are stupid. You think they are simplistic and idiots. You think they have no economic understanding at all, even though the products that many of them make require foreign buyers and they have an idea of what's going on in foreign markets. You in the mainstream media, you in the DC globalist elite on either side of the partisan aisle think they are idiots, and you have not only taken them for granted, you have dismissed their concerns. Now there's a president who doesn't do that. And it bothers them that this man, who is doing what they would not do because it offended their ideology, which was not to promote the United States, he's doing it, and the people are with him. Let's make this real crystal clear. The American people support what Donald Trump is doing. Rasmussen came out with a poll that they published on the 12th of March. Americans prefer U.S. manufacturing over lower consumer costs, which is the exact opposite narrative that you hear about in D.C. The American people, they're not going to be willing to pay higher prices. These tariffs got to go. No, I'm sorry. It's a different narrative. Many in the manufacturing business worry the newly imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum imports can hurt the United States manufacturing base by driving up costs for both businesses and consumers. Most Americans agree it's important to keep a major industrial base in the United States, even if it costs consumers more. Donald Trump understands the American people. Or more to the point, he simply agrees with them. while the Lindsey Grahams, the Paul Ryans, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers do not. That's why they struggle with Donald Trump. Because they don't agree with the American people. Well, now the tariffs are going into place. There's a new sheriff in town in Washington, D.C. regarding global trade interests for this country. It's going to have an impact. I can't wait. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com. And WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. You realize, of course, that most of the left, to a person almost, has decided that, at least in this country, that Donald Trump is a racist. He hates everybody who is not Caucasian. He hates Mexicans. He hates blacks. He hates Muslims, even though there are plenty of white Muslims. He hates and Muslim isn't a race. But, nah, I digress. Particularly with regard to black people, he is particularly racist in the minds of many black folks who are idiots. It's just that simple. This is the same guy who got an Ellis Island Award because of his support of those type of causes. This is the guy who got awards from Al Sharpton. This is the guy who hobnobs with so many blacks, has no this is the same guy who, when Jennifer Hudson's family members were murdered, without fanfare and without being requested, put her up in his Chicago hotel and gave her family members a security detail so that they would be able to cope a little bit better. To call Donald Trump a racist is basically not that much different from calling the sunrise a full moon. It's ludicrous on its face. There's nothing to it. Well, what about the Central Park Five? What about them? He thought they were guilty and it was a horrendous crime. Oh, he thought they were guilty because they were black. He thought they were guilty for whatever reason he thought they were guilty. That doesn't make him racist. That makes him a person with an opinion. Well, he was sued for housing discrimination, as was just about every other significant landlord in New York City who was renting to people who were of lower income. I don't know any large New York landlords in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s who weren't sued for housing discrimination. Why? Because they didn't pay, because the laws are on their side if they don't pay. So the best way to do it, since you can't get the money from them, is to keep them out of your buildings in the first place. You find out the profile of people who do not pay rent, and you don't rent to them. Nevertheless, Donald Trump has the rap that he is a racist. And more to the point, any black people who meet with Donald Trump are automatically Uncle Toms, coons, and every other thing, because you can't possibly be talking to this racist. Yeah. Well, you also may recall at the beginning of his administration, there was some fanfare about HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. There was a picture of the presidents of many of those institutions gathered in the Oval Office with the president, big photo op, a lot of things made about Omarosa having something to do with that. It was strange to me. And then, of course, it turned out that They went there apparently looking for money that they didn't get from Barack Obama, and Donald Trump was not there to hand them checks. He supports their mission, but he doesn't believe it's supposed to be necessarily a taxpayer-funded mission. If you want to be someone who is respected in the education community, then go do your job, make your case, get your students, and have them do for you what other students do for other universities. You build your reputation upon the exploits of your graduates. But of course, he was a racist for not following through and giving them all kinds of money. I get that. Well, let's fast forward a year, a little more than a year. I always think with all the density of news coverage regarding Donald Trump tends to make you think the man's been in office for a decade sometimes, when we're just barely 13 plus months into a 4-year term. Part of it is Trump's fault. And it's not, well, he tweets some. No, he does so much. Donald Trump is a doer. Barack Obama wasn't a doer. Barack Obama was a sit back and let things happen kind of guy. I'm not saying he took no action, but the idea that he was on his job the way Donald Trump is on his job is ridiculous. It's not true. Donald Trump gets up every morning thinking about something that he's going to do. And the things that he's trying to do are simply trying to fulfill the campaign pledges that he made. Well, what about Stormy Daniels? That was 2006. If you weren't trying to find a way to bring down the president, she denied the thing in writing not that long ago. Now, of course, somebody's gotten to her, and I guarantee you they're cutting her a check, and so she's after the president. And it makes no difference. Who cares about what happened 12 years ago? I don't. I don't even worry about what happened in my life 12 years ago. I'm definitely not going to worry about what happened in the life of somebody I don't know. And he's not doing anything with that. Well, they paid her. He didn't pay her. His lawyer paid her. He didn't authorize that. He didn't have anything to do with it. What about Russia? Can we stop with the Russia nonsense? It's a bridge to nowhere. There's no there. It's a nothing burger, and you keep going with it. And Mueller is now investigating the Hubble Space Telescope because he can't find anything on Earth to link Donald Trump to Russia and colluding in the election of 2016. But here's something you can find. 2018. This is from the Office of the Secretary of Education. Secretary DeVos, you know, Betsy DeVos, the people that they boo everywhere she goes, and she goes to see public schools, and she goes to speak to a black college or university, you know, she gets treated like something stuck to the bottom of their shoes. Secretary DeVos issues full forgiveness of HBCU hurricane relief loans. Did you see this in the mainstream media? Did MSNBC cover this? Did CNN cover this? Did ABC cover this? Did Fox even cover this? I didn't see this anywhere. March 14th. Today, U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos announced full forgiveness of the hurricane relief loans provided to 4 historically black colleges and universities after hurricanes Katrina and Rita struck the Gulf Coast in 2005. This additional disaster relief will lift a huge burden and enable the 4 HBCUs to continue their focus on serving their students and communities, said DeVos. This relief provides one more step toward full recovery. Oh, this was part of the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. It happened under Trump. This administration's support of the Congressional Act to eliminate $322 million in Hurricane Katrina loans taken out by 4 HBCUs was the right thing to do and was a big deal, said Johnny C. Taylor Jr., chairman of the President's Board of Advisors on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. So for everybody saying that Donald Trump hasn't done anything for HBCUs, he effectively gave them $322 million. He gave them No, he didn't. He said, you know what, let me help you out. For those of you, and there's a number of you out there, particularly in the black community, who have credit card debt that you don't want to pay, and you go into one of those deals where you negotiate the debt away, and your $10,000 credit card debt somehow goes down to $1,500, and you pay the $1,500, and you think everything is fine. Wait till the IRS hears about it, and they take the difference between what you owed and what you paid and call it income. Somebody gave you $8,500. You just happened to spend it. Donald Trump just did the same thing for HBCUs. I'm going to give you this $322 million to pay off this debt. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Don't tell me that that is the act that a racist would take. If you hate the HBCUs and you see them struggling under a debt that was not forced upon them, let them struggle. He didn't. He simply didn't. Donald Trump ain't a racist. But the ones who are calling him a racist, you need to check their motivation. And that's our show. May God bless and keep you. And until next week, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.